let's continue our discussion from where we have stopped in our last class. So in the last class, I said I have asked you to, if I remember, I have asked you to solve this particular problem in practice. And the other earlier problem also, problem 3 and problem 4, I have asked you to solve it. So if you have got any doubts, you can discuss with me at the end of the class today. So let's continue our discussion. Earlier, we have been talking about how to calculate your active earth pressure or passive earth pressure, depending on the case, or at rest earth pressure, based on Rankine's earth pressure theory. And what we have been looking at the earlier cases is the backfill material is horizontal. Okay, I repeat, the backfill material is horizontal and your retaining wall is vertical and smooth. These are the cases what we have been considering. But however, apart from that particular regular conditions, you do also come across with some other special cases. Like, okay, in the assumptions of Rankine's theory, we said the backfill is dry, but it's not that always we are going for the dry condition of the backfill. We are also even taking the reference of water table. So depending on the position of the water table, how your earth pressure is varying, either in case of active or passive or at rest condition, we have been seeing that. So that special case is what we call it as submergence condition of your soil. If at all complete part of the soil is submerged or some depth of the soil is submerged, some depth of the soil in the sense, some portion of the backfill is submerged. So we have seen how to get your earth pressure distribution diagram. And from that earth pressure distribution diagram, we have seen how to calculate your net resultant force or net thrust force, what is coming on your retaining wall in any of those particular cases. And now let's also look at some other special cases. Why I'm calling it as special cases? Because in the general assumptions of Rankine's theory, we don't talk about the inclined backfill or inclined retaining wall. Okay. So, but however, Rankine has also taken into consideration of those particular cases in subsequently estimating how much is going to be your earth pressure at any particular depth if you are trying to calculate. See, the approach wise, how to calculate your active pressure or passive pressure for inclined backfill or maybe inclined retaining wall. So approach would be more or less similar to that of what we have looked at in our earlier discussion, but with a slight difference to the discussion. Okay. So let's understand what is that difference that we are going to be encountering. Now here, that particular case, what I am trying to talk about is still the retaining wall is smooth and vertical, but however the backfill, what I am looking at, okay, this is the surface of the backfill is inclined. So this is basically an inclined backfill case is what we are looking, sloping backfill. So when I say it's an inclined backfill, then how do we have the state of stress coming on that particular chosen soil element at any particular depth Z below that surface of the inclined backfill? Okay. So if I look at the state of stress coming on that particular soil element, so one thing what I have to clearly understand is the state of stress. Now what I am going to be representing on that particular soil element do not just contain only the normal stresses on your face, because if you look at here, the stress in the vertical direction, the stress is vertical, but the plane on which that particular stress is acting is no more going to be vertical. Rather, it's an inclined backfill surface. Okay. So this vertical stress, if I start resolving it, I'm going to have two components. One component is perpendicular to that backfill surface, and other component is tangential to that backfill surface. So I have to be very careful. I cannot blindly go by that assumption that the stresses acting on those particular planes of the chosen element are only normal stresses, and we cannot simply call them as your principal stresses. Rather, there are some stresses acting on those particular planes, and based on that state of stress, you can go on to plot your Mohr circle, and from which you can go on to define what is your maximum pressure at which your retaining wall is going to be stable, either in the case of active or subsequently the passive condition. Okay. Now look at here. This is going to be your typical earth pressure distribution diagram. Okay. So what do you understand here is, earlier in the case, if the backfill was horizontal, if you are looking at your earth pressure distribution diagram, we represented our earth pressure distribution diagram like this. This particular case was for backfill horizontal. So in the case of backfill horizontal, we said the net resultant earth pressure or resultant thrust force is nothing but it is represented horizontal. Why did we represent horizontal? Rather, instead of calling it as horizontal, I should say always we represent your direction of your thrust force parallel to that of your backfill surface. Okay, so as we understand here in this particular case, as the backfill is horizontal, so your resultant thrust, what we are indicating because of the soil on the retaining wall, is also represented parallel to your backfill surface. Okay, so that's the reason why this resultant thrust force PA or PP, which we have talked about, was indicated horizontal in our earlier cases. Now here, as the backfill is inclined, so what is the inclination of that backfill surface? The inclination of that particular backfill surface is beta with the horizontal. So subsequently, your resultant thrust force, what we are talking about, your PA in the case of active state, or PP in the case of passive state, is also going to be represented parallel to that of your backfill surface. So in the sense, this resultant thrust force is going to be represented at an inclination beta with the horizontal. The way how we calculate this resultant thrust force, the way how we plot your earth pressure distribution diagram, everything remains the same. There is no change at all, but only the small change that you are going to be coming across here is with, as the backfill is inclined, the resultant thrust, what you are going to be indicating, or your earth pressure distribution diagram also, what you are going to be representing at any particular depth, would be inclined at an inclination of beta with the horizontal. At any particular depth, if you are calculating how much is your earth pressure value at that particular depth, so that earth pressure direction, what you are going to be representing, is going to be inclined at an inclination beta. And subsequently, your resultant thrust, what you are calculating, would also be indicated at an inclination beta with the horizontal. So why are we indicating like this? Because as your considered soil mass, which is undergoing the failure, is making an inclination with the horizontal, that's your slow backfill is making an inclination beta with the horizontal. So subsequently, the pressure coming from that backfill material on your surface of the retaining wall is also indicated at that inclination beta with the horizontal. So that's only the difference. Otherwise, all the other calculations what we have been talking about remains the same. Okay. So now here, if you look at how did we generally write down the expression for your active earth pressure? If you can recall, I hope this is how we were writing it, at the bottom of your retaining wall, as half into gamma into h square into Ka in the case of active state. And in the case of passive state, we said, okay, this is half into gamma into h square into Kp. Okay, where Ka and Kp, what we had was simply nothing but Ka is 1 minus sine phi by 1 plus sine phi, and Kp is 1 plus sine phi by 1 minus sine phi. But however, when it comes to the case of your inclined condition, I repeat, when it comes to the case of your inclined condition, from your Mohr circle, if you are going to calculate your earth pressure, that so-called maximum stress at which the failure is getting initiated in the soil, so you are going to be getting that value as something like this. From the Mohr circle, if I go on to calculate what is your PA, that's your earth pressure value, I'll be getting the value like this. At any particular depth, if you want to talk about. If I simply want to calculate at any particular depth how much is the value, then I can go on to calculate like this. Okay. So earlier in the previous slide, what I have been giving here is your resultant thrust, basically. This is not earth pressure, this is the resultant thrust, expression for resultant thrust. Yeah. Now, if I look at here, this is the earth pressure expression at any particular depth. Earlier also we had the same expression, a generalized expression. If you look at, it's nothing but Gamma into Z indicates you the stress in the vertical direction, into Ka gives you the stress in the horizontal direction, where you are considering the soil to be dry, and the other assumptions are still considered the same. So gamma into Z into Ka was the expression what we had. Okay. Now here also, though your backfill is inclined, still we are writing the generalized expression the same. But however, what is Ka? Ka is what we are getting, or what we are representing as like this, where the expression for Ka is nothing but cos beta into cos beta minus under square root of cos square beta minus cos square phi by cos beta plus square root of cos square beta minus cos square phi, where here beta is nothing but the inclination of your backfill material with the horizontal, and phi is the angle of shearing resistance of that particular soil. Okay. In some books, this is how you will be having your expression for Pa. Okay. So where Pa is what in general representation is given as gamma into Z into Ka, and the expression for Ka is given like this. But whereas in some books, you would see that Pa still remains as a generalized expression, something like this: gamma into Z into, I can write it as Ka into cos beta. Some books you will be finding it like this. So in the case of BM Das, the above expression you will be finding it. In the case of Gopal Ranjan, you will be finding this particular expression. So there is nothing wrong here. Okay. So Pa is indicated as gamma into Z into Ka into cos beta, where Ka, what we are going to be looking there, is nothing but this expression. So if you ultimately compare both of them, you don't find any difference in what we are talking about, but only the way how those terms are represented is slightly different. But otherwise, the general meaning, ultimately what you are trying to calculate, is once again the same. Okay. Look at here. Here in the expression of Ka, that's your coefficient of active earth pressure, you don't have this complete term multiplied with cos beta, which you see in the earlier expression, in the above expression. Where did that cos beta go? That cos beta is represented in your expression for your active earth pressure only, generalized expression of active earth pressure only. Okay. Instead of representing in the expression of Pa the cos beta term, if it is represented in Ka, then Pa would simply be represented as gamma into Z into Ka. That's it. Okay. So nothing to worry about. So however it is represented in any of the standard textbooks you refer to, but ultimately when you calculate your active earth pressure term, the magnitude of the active earth pressure at any particular depth, when you are calculating for that backfill material which is inclined, you will be getting it to be same, whether you follow this set of expression or this set of expressions, it doesn't matter. And similarly, in the case of passive state also, I can simply go on to calculate your passive earth pressure distribution diagram with sloping backfill. Okay. So in the case of the sloping backfill, if we are going to calculate your passive earth pressure distribution diagram, so you are going to have your passive earth pressure distribution diagram like this, and this would give you what is called as your resultant thrust in the case of your passive earth pressure. And expression for Kp is what you will be getting it as cos beta into cos beta plus square root of cos square beta minus cos square phi by cos beta minus square root of cos square beta minus cos square phi. So you have to be little careful in looking at the expressions with respect to different books that you are following. It doesn't matter which book you follow. So ultimately you can write it like this, or you can also be representing the same thing like this as what we have been talking about. So I can write it as half into gamma into h square into cos beta into Kp, where the expression for Kp comes out to be, instead of cos beta is already represented in the earlier expression, so in Kp you will not be indicating cos beta. The remaining part of the expression comes into picture, that is cos beta plus square root of cos square beta minus cos square phi divided by cos beta minus cos square beta minus cos square phi. Okay. So that's how I can go on to calculate your resultant thrust in the case of your active state or passive state with an inclined backfill condition. And you would also come across with whether various other conditions like let's say your retaining wall. Now earlier we were trying to look at the cases of yeah, sorry. So we were trying to look at the conditions of retaining wall, which was yeah. So I'm looking at this surface. Okay, this particular surface I am looking at. So we considered the retaining wall surface to be smooth and vertical. Here, instead of considering it to be smooth and vertical, what we are looking at is the surface of the retaining wall is now no more considered to be smooth and vertical. Rather, what I am doing is I am considering an inclined retaining wall surface, which is still smooth. Okay, so but however, the surface of this retaining wall, which is in contact with the backfill material. Let's say, for example, I'm considering the backfill to be, this is my backfill surface. For now, I'm considering the backfill to be horizontal. And later, I can also even take the combination of your backfill, which is inclined, as well as your retaining wall, which is also inclined, which you will be coming across in this particular case, what you are looking at. So in this particular case, what we see is the backfill is inclined and your retaining wall surface is also inclined. Okay. So the inclination of your retaining wall with the horizontal, let me indicate it as alpha. Okay. And this is what is your backfill material here. And now when you look at how to calculate your resultant thrust coming from your adjacent soil on the retaining wall, either in the case of active state or either in the case of passive state. So what we can go on to do is just look at here. Earlier, for a horizontal backfill, we know how to calculate your earth pressure distribution diagram, or we know how to calculate your resultant thrust, which is coming from the adjacent soil on the surface of the retaining wall. So, but the earlier case, what we had is the surface of the retaining wall was vertical. Now, what I am just trying to do is, I am just trying to indicate a simple geometry here. Let's say this surface is some surface AB. Now, instead of directly understanding how to calculate the resultant thrust force coming from the adjacent soil on that inclined surface AB, what I am doing is I am just dropping a line perpendicular to your backfill surface from point B. So this point, wherever it intersects the horizontal backfill surface, that point I am indicating it as point C. Now, from my earlier understanding, I know how to calculate the resultant force coming from this particular portion of the backfill material. I am looking at only this portion of the backfill material. Okay. So due to this portion of the backfill material, we know how to calculate the resultant thrust force, what is coming on your vertical surface of your retaining wall. So now here also I am considering my vertical surface to be BC surface. Okay. So on some BC plane, how much is your resultant thrust force, what is coming from the adjacent soil, which is either in active state or passive state, I can very much go on to calculate. And how do we get that? We know how to calculate it from the earlier learning. So I'll simply write it as something PA1. Now, what does this PA1 indicates? PA1 indicates the resultant thrust coming from soil on the vertical plane BC. Okay, so earlier that vertical plane BC was nothing but the surface of your retaining wall, the vertical surface, what you were looking at. But here in this case, the retaining wall is not vertical, it's an inclined surface. So for now, first what I am doing is, I know how to calculate on a vertical plane what is the pressure exerted by the adjacent soil on the retaining on that vertical plane. Okay, so in that same way, I am calculating how much is the net resultant thrust force coming from the adjacent soil on what is called as a chosen vertical plane BC. Okay, that is what I am representing it as PA1. And if you look at this triangular portion ABC, triangle ABC, so I have got some weight of that soil wedge or soil block ABC. Okay, so I am going to be representing the weight of that soil wedge as something WB, as W. Okay, and now I know there are two force components which are ultimately to be represented on that inclined surface of the backfill. What are those two force components? Force component coming from the adjacent soil on that retaining wall surface, and force component which is directly what I am representing it as the weight of this particular wedge ABC, which is going to be acting on that inclined surface. So the resultant of this particular weight of this wedge ABC is going to be acting on this inclined surface at some particular point. Okay, so I'll just quickly represent the same thing again here. Okay, so what I understand is from this adjacent soil, I am indicating what is called as your active earth pressure, and because of the soil wedge weight W, so what is going to be my resultant thrust force now, which I should be representing on your inclined retaining wall surface. This is your inclined retaining wall surface AB. Okay, so my resultant thrust is going to be what is here indicating it as PA. So what is this PA is equal to? PA is nothing but under root of W square plus PA1 square from the simple trigonometry. So from the Pythagoras theorem, the resultant of this horizontal and vertical force component is what I am writing it as PA. So how do we get this PA value, magnitude of this resultant thrust, complete resultant of your active earth pressure coming on your inclined wall surface? So is what I can subsequently calculate like this. Okay, so in case if your retaining wall surface is inclined and your backfill is also horizontal, okay, so retaining wall is inclined and backfill is sloping. Sorry, earlier I said horizontal, I think. Okay, so now here the retaining wall surface is inclined and the backfill is also inclined. So in such particular case, I can still go on. The earlier case was the backfill was horizontal, but now in this particular case, what I am referring to is this is my retaining wall. What I am looking at, the backfill is inclined at an inclination beta. The retaining wall surface is also inclined at an inclination alpha with the horizontal. And this is what I am considering it as my failure wedge. Okay, I'm talking about failure surface. Okay, so that's how I can now go on to calculate subsequently how much is going to be a resultant thrust force, which comes from the adjacent soil, which is either in active state or passive state on the surface of your retaining wall. Okay, so the way or the approach still remains the same. So what we do is, first I'll just try to consider this surface of the retaining wall to be AB. From point B, I'll just try to drop a vertical line onto this inclined backfill surface, wherever it intersects the inclined backfill surface. That point I am considering it as point C. Okay, so if it is only an inclined backfill, how we used to calculate your so-called resultant thrust? You can still do it in the same way. This what I am writing it as PA1. This is going to be indicated at an angle of inclination beta with the horizontal, and because of your weight component of that soil wedge ABC, W. Okay. So now the resultant of these two forces, PA1 force and W force, is what I am supposed to be indicating. So W and PA1 force. Okay. So resultant of these two is what I can indicate it like this, which is nothing but PA. Okay, so the resultant of those two forces is what I am going to be calculating from that same basic fundamentals of trigonometry again. So that's what we are trying to talk about here. So this is the case what I am referring to. Okay, so you know your PA1 force, where PA1 is going to be indicated at an angle of inclination beta with the horizontal. W is the weight of that particular soil wedge which I am trying to look at. Okay, corresponding to the triangle portion ABC, and the resultant of this W force and the PA1 force is what is indicated as your resultant active thrust, ultimately indicated on your inclined surface of the retaining wall. Okay, so that's how you go on to calculate. First, basic fundamentals by which we are calculating your active earth pressure is what we have understood in our earlier classes. In today's class, in case if you are retaining, in case if your backfill is not horizontal, if it is inclined, then we have seen how to calculate your active earth pressure and the resultant thrust coming from that active condition of the soil on the retaining wall, which was vertical. Then we have incorporated the other condition that retaining wall need not be always vertical, it can also be even inclined. In case if it is inclined, then we have seen how to calculate your net resultant thrust coming from the adjacent soil on your inclined retaining wall surface. And then we have also incorporated the effect of your inclined retaining wall surface and your inclined backfill condition. And ultimately, we were trying to look at how to get the resultant thrust ultimately coming from the adjacent soil, which is either in active state or which could be either in passive state. So the resultant thrust coming on the inclined surface of the retaining wall due to the effect of your inclined backfill is also what we have understood how to calculate. Okay, so in simple terms, this here even in the earlier case or in this case, so either as it is one force component is horizontal, one force component is vertical, I could simply use your Pythagoras theorem in that way. But here in this particular case, it cannot be your Pythagoras theorem. I have to go by your simple engineering mechanics, how you have calculated the resultant of those two vectors. What are those two vectors? Weight is one vector quantity, PA1 force is another vector quantity. So we will go on to calculate the resultant of those two vector quantities as your PA. Okay, so PA is what I'll get it as the resultant of your weight vector and PA1 force vector. Okay, so resultant of those two force vectors from engineering mechanics, how we have learned. So in the same way, you will be calculating to get what is the resultant of these two force vectors, which is indicated as your PA force. Okay, so where here PA force is nothing but the resultant thrust which is coming from the adjacent soil, which is an inclined backfill, and due to that inclined backfill, the resultant force how much is coming on the inclined retaining wall surface is what we are subsequently calculating. Okay. So now let's quickly go on to the other theory based on which we can go on to learn how to calculate your earth pressure distribution diagram, or how to know how much is your earth pressure coming from the adjacent soil, which is in active state or passive state, based on Coulomb's earth pressure theory. Okay. Earlier, what we have been looking at is the case of your Rankine's earth pressure theory. But however, now what we are quickly coming across is with Coulomb's earth pressure theory, and particularly this Coulomb's earth pressure theory, to start with, we assume that it's applicable for cohesionless soil. That's the reason why here it's indicated as for sand, cohesionless soil in the sense sand. Okay, but it doesn't mean that it has to be always only for cohesionless soil. Later on, subsequently, the Coulomb's theory is has also taken into consideration of your C5 parameters of the soil. That's nothing but cohesion parameter as well as angle of shearing resistance parameter is also taken into consideration, ultimately to understand how to estimate your active earth pressure or passive earth pressure based on your Coulomb's earth pressure theory. Okay, let's quickly come across with the assumptions that are made in this Coulomb's earth pressure theory. Is soil is assumed to be isotropic and homogeneous. The rupture or the failure surface, what we are going to be indicating, is considered to be a planar surface which basically passes through the heel of your retaining wall. So when you are looking at your retaining wall, let's say this is my retaining wall, what I am trying to talk about. This portion is called as heel. So the portion of your retaining wall which is in contact with the backfill material. Okay, this is my backfill. That portion of the retaining wall is what you are calling it as heel. And typically when you try to look at that retaining wall more in a precise way to understand, then we'll be able to understand what is this heel portion in the case of that retaining walls and so on. Okay, this portion of the retaining wall is what I am considering it as toe portion. Yeah. So if this is a backfill material, and let's quickly understand the rupture or the failure surface what you are talking about. So we say this is my failure surface which gets developed at some angle of inclination theta with the horizontal. Earlier, even in the case of Rankine's theory also, we have seen the failure surface in the case of active state gets developed at an angle of inclination 45 plus 5 by 2 with the horizontal. In the case of passive state, the failure surface makes an angle of inclination 45 minus 5 by 2 with the horizontal, or with the vertical it is 45 plus 5 by 2. The same thing what we have talked about here also, we are saying that your so-called failure surface, whatever we are trying or whatever we are assuming that it gets developed, so it is assumed to be a planar surface. So the failure lies in a plane. Rather, in the simplest form, it's nothing but it's a straight path along which the failure surface is subsequently getting developed. Along some particular plane, the failure surface is getting developed. But however, it's not always compulsory that your failure surface has to be a planar failure surface. Rather, you would also come across with what is called as more realistic failure surface is going to be rather a failure surface something like this. Okay, so which is going to be indicated by what is called as sometimes log spiral failure surface. In some cases, you would be simply considering it as circular failure surface. Okay, so we are not going into much details. We are going by the same basic fundamental assumptions of either the Rankine's theory or the Coulomb's theory. So what we consider is your failure surface is assumed to be a planar failure surface. Okay, and next assumption is the back of the wall can be inclined to that of your vertical. So your back of the retaining wall, what you are trying to talk about, it can be either vertical or it can be either inclined. That's what it means. And the roughness of the wall is even considered in the case of your Coulomb set pressure theory. So roughness of the wall means it's the wall friction angle what you are coming across is what we'll be talking about here in this particular case. Additionally, that means the friction between the wall and the backfill material is taken into consideration in the case of Coulomb's theory. The failure wedge, this particular wedge which we are trying to talk about, okay, so this failure wedge is a rigid body. We consider that that's portion of that soil wedge which is trying to slide because of the moment in your retaining wall. If the retaining wall is moving away from the soil, then that soil wedge is going to be sliding in the downward direction. If this retaining wall is trying to move towards the soil, then retaining wall pushes that soil wedge. So if the retaining wall is pushing that soil wedge tries to slide in the upper direction along that failure surface. Okay, so whatever that soil wedge what you are looking at, so soil wedge is considered to be a rigid body. In that sense, that soil block or soil wedge is considered to be a rigid block where internal deformations in that soil wedge are assumed to be zero. Okay, soil block on a whole will try to have the displacement. So you don't assume to have what is called as internal deformations or deformation happening in that particular soil wedge. The complete soil wedge acts like a single unit where no internal deformations are happening. So that's the reason we, that's an assumption what we are making. So that soil wedge is going to be a rigid block. So if at all there is a displacement happening in the rigid block, it either happens in the downward direction or in the upward direction, depending on the displacement in your retaining wall. If the retaining wall is moving away from the soil, then the soil wedge which is in contact with this retaining wall tries to move towards the soil, because of which the displacement in the soil wedge is going to be downward. If the retaining wall is getting pushed towards your soil, in the case of passive state, what we see is, if the retaining wall is moving towards the soil, then that so-called soil wedge, what we are looking at, will, as this retaining wall is moving towards the soil, this soil wedge gets pushed, and subsequently the soil wedge tried to slide in the upper direction along that failure surface. Okay. So depending on how your soil wedge is getting displaced, whether it is getting displaced downward or whether it is getting displaced upward, we are going to look at the equilibrium of that particular soil wedge, because we are not talking about the failure in the soil, just at the verge of failure in that particular soil medium. What is the maximum pressure being exerted by that soil on the retaining wall, either in the case of active state or either in the case of passive state, is what we are interested in looking at. Okay, so just before the verge of failure, that's nothing but at the limiting equilibrium condition, either in the case of active or either in the case of passive state, we are going to see how to calculate your so-called active earth pressure or passive earth pressure. That's in the sense the thrust force in the case of active state or passive state based on Coulomb's earth pressure theory is what we are going to be looking at. So that we are going to be calculating based on what is called as the equilibrium of that particular soil wedge, which is expected to undergo your sliding because of the failure. If at all failure is completely getting developed, there will be some soil block which will try to slide either in the downward direction or in the upper direction, depending on the displacement in your retaining wall. If the displacement in the retaining wall is away from the soil wedge tries to slide downward. Then we'll try to look at your free body diagram of that soil wedge, and then we go on to understand how to calculate that so-called active thrust force or passive thrust force coming on your retaining wall. And let's look at some other assumptions. That the failure, what you are looking at, as I'm saying, it's a planar failure surface, and this soil wedge, what you are looking at, is in only two-dimensional plane. We are not looking at the soil wedge, which is subsequently to be indicated in the three-dimensional space. Okay, so we are representing that failure, or we are looking at the failure surface or failure in the soil block only in two-dimensional plane. Assuming that the soil, whatever is undergoing the failure, is in the length direction to relatively longer distances. So that it means it's a plane strain condition. The deformation or the subsequent failure, what is supposed to be happening in this direction, is not happening. So failure surface is getting developed with respect to only this plane. Okay. And the assumption is the soil is dry and cohesionless. Yes, the cohesionless soil, in the sense the soil has got C value to be equal to 0. But however, we do even take into consideration of the effect of your C5 parameters of the soil also in the case of Coulomb's theory. These are general assumptions which he has started with. Then later on, he has also incorporated the effect of cohesion in estimating your earth pressure values. Yeah. Here, though we say the soil is dry, but it may not replicate all conditions what you come across in the field, because always the backfill material which is adjacent to the retaining wall may not be dry. Sometimes you might also have the position of your water table. So you can also even take into consideration of the effect of water table and subsequently calculate your earth pressure due to your active state or passive state. Okay. These are all some basic assumptions what Coulomb has made, and this particular Coulomb's theory, what we are talking about, was developed some way back in 1756 by the researcher Coulomb. And this part of this Coulomb's earth pressure theory is not there in our syllabus, but however I am discussing it just for your idea. I'll be talking about this Coulomb's earth pressure theory just to give you a glimpse of, okay, it's not just only your Rankine's earth pressure theory based on which we talk about your earth pressure distribution from the adjacent soil on the retaining wall, you have also got the other theory based on which you can also go on to estimate your earth pressure. So now I'll just quickly start with a simple case, that is your wall is smooth. So what is this wall is smooth? So I am assuming that there is no friction between the surface of the retaining wall and your backfill material. So, and I'm also taking into consideration that your backfill is horizontal. Sir, earlier itself in the assumptions you said wall friction angle, that's a friction between the retaining wall and your adjacent backfill material is considered. You mentioned that. Yes, I do come across with that particular case. The purpose for talking about this particular condition, that the wall is smooth and the backfill is horizontal, okay, in the case of active or in the case of passive state. So I'll just take an example to show you that if the retaining wall is smooth and if the backfill is horizontal, the expression what we are going to be getting from Coulomb's theory for estimating the active earth pressure or passive earth pressure is same as that of what we have got from your Rankine's earth pressure. That's what I just want to show you, because it's not that Coulomb's theory is something totally different from that of your Rankine's theory. Rankine's theory, rather it is developed somewhere in 19th century. The oldest theory in this is your Coulomb's theory only, which is developed in 18th century. Okay. So Rankine's theory is subsequently developed in the later stage, taking into consideration of some other aspects which Coulomb has not very much keenly focused on. That means your C5 soil parameters, submerged condition of the soil, all those cases are very much taken into consideration. But however, in the case of Rankine's theory, in general context, we consider that your retaining wall surface is always smooth, but which is not the case in your Coulomb's theory. Okay, so now let me quickly go through this particular case, what I am talking about. Let's say this is my retaining wall, what I am trying to talk about, where the retaining wall is smooth and vertical. Okay, right. So this backfill, what I am trying to talk about, is a horizontal backfill. Yeah. And we said the failure surface gets developed with respect to the heel portion. So this is my failure surface, which is considered to be the planar surface, because it's that so-called failure what I am trying to define is represented in some particular direction. So such failure surface is what we call it as your planar failure surface. It's a planar surface. Right. I would consider this failure surface, what I am trying to talk about, makes an angle of inclination, something theta with the horizontal. My objective is to understand what is this theta value. In Rankine's earth pressure theory, we know this theta value is nothing but 45 plus 5 by 2 with the horizontal in the case of active state. In the case of passive state, this theta value, the angle of inclination at which the failure surface would get developed, is nothing but 45 minus 5 by 2 with the horizontal in the case of passive state. In the with the vertical, in the case of passive, it is nothing but 45 plus 5 by 2. I am not going into details how we have got that again, so which we have already discussed in detail in our earlier classes. So my objective now, what I will be focusing is with this theta. Okay. So what is this theta value going to be? At what angle of inclination theta this so-called failure surface is going to be getting developed when the soil is at the verge of failure. Okay. So that's what I'll be trying to quickly understand. So now let me look at this particular soil wedge. Let's say this is a soil wedge A, B, C. Okay. So for this particular soil wedge, I am considering the soil to be cohesionless, in the sense only 5 parameter of this soil is considered and the unit weight of the soil is anyhow taken into consideration. Now I'll quickly look at the free body diagram of that particular soil wedge, because as we said, in the case of the Coulomb's theory, we look at the equilibrium condition of the soil, which is just there at the verge of failure, and then accordingly we go on to find out the thrust Either it could be an active thrust or passive thrust, what is coming on your retaining wall. This is your soil wedge A, B, C. Okay. So this angle is nothing but theta, or otherwise this angle is also nothing but theta. Now I can apply the equilibrium conditions first. Before I start talking about the equilibrium conditions, first I have to represent all the forces what are going to be acting on that particular soil wedge. So what all forces will be coming across? The weight of this soil wedge, that is W. And this particular case, what I am trying to look at is your active state, let's say. When I say active state, the retaining wall will be moving away from the soil. When the retaining wall is moving away from the soil, what do you see in this particular soil wedge, ABC? Soil wedge, will it try to, if at all the wedge tries to slide at the verge of failure, so in which direction the soil wedge would try to slide? Soil wedge starts sliding in the downward direction, because if the retaining wall starts moving away from the soil, there is a vacant portion available here, because of which the soil tends to slide in the downward direction. So if the soil is trying to slide in the downward direction, then the friction along this failure surface is going to be there in this inclined upward direction. Okay. So that frictional resistance is something what I am representing it as yes. There will be a normal reaction force which is going to be offered by this soil on your soil wedge, which is tending to undergo the failure. Okay, this is your normal reaction force offered by the soil which is in stationary condition. This portion of the soil is stationary, that's not going to be moving anywhere. Only this portion of the soil, what is represented in the soil wedge ABC, is expected to slide either downward or upward depending on the displacement in that retaining wall. Okay, so that stationary soil mass is going to be offering obviously a normal reaction on that so-called failure surface, what is expected to be getting developed, and that normal reaction is what I am representing it as N. Okay, and what else I should be representing? Reaction in the form of friction, reaction in the form of normal reaction due to the stationary soil mass on that soil wedge is what we have represented. The weight of the soil wedge we have represented, and in general term, what would happen is this soil mass would exert what is called as a resultant active thrust force on the retaining wall. Now, action is PA. The reaction offered by the retaining wall on your soil wedge, when I am looking at, is PA in the opposite direction. Okay, action was from the soil on the retaining wall, and the reaction would be equal and opposite, which is offered by your retaining wall on your soil wedge. So that's nothing but PA. So I have drawn my free body diagram for that particular soil wedge ABC. So once the free body diagram is done, then I can go on to talk about the equilibrium condition, which I can talk about. But before that, I should first know what is the weight of that particular soil wedge which I am looking at. So for that, I can go on to consider the triangle ABC. In the triangle ABC, I'll just quickly calculate what is BC. How do we calculate the weight? Weight is nothing but unit weight of the soil into the corresponding volume of that soil wedge ABC. Now, how do I calculate the volume of that soil wedge? Volume of the soil wedge is nothing but area of the soil wedge into 1 meter in this particular direction. That's the direction perpendicular to the screen. For every 1 meter in the direction of the length of the retaining wall. So we are trying to calculate what is going to be the weight of that particular soil mass. So for calculating the area, I require what is the height of that soil wedge. I require what is the width of that soil wedge. It means AB value is required, BC value is required. So AB is nothing but it is equal to the height of the retaining wall, and BC is something what I am required to calculate. So that's why I'm saying BC is what I am trying to write down. So BC in terms of AB, I'll try to write down. Okay. So if I'm trying to write down BC in terms of AB, so first what I can do is tan theta is what I can write it as. Opposite side is AB, by adjacent side is BC. So from that, if I try to rewrite BC, I'll be getting it as AB into cot theta. Okay, so AB is what I have it as height of the retaining wall. So H into cot theta. So this indicates what is called as your height of the retaining wall. So what is my area of soil wedge ABC? So area of soil wedge ABC is nothing but it's a triangle. So half into AB into BC. So which I can write it as half into H into H cot theta. This is nothing but half into H square cot theta. And therefore, the volume of soil wedge which is undergoing the failure is nothing but the area of wedge ABC into 1. So for every 1 meter in the length direction of the retaining wall. So area of the wedge ABC is half into H square into cot theta into 1. So ultimately I'll be representing it as half into H square into cot theta is going to be the volume of your soil wedge for every 1 meter length of the retaining wall. So therefore, the weight of soil wedge is equal to unit weight of the soil into volume of soil wedge. Okay, so gamma into half into H square into cot theta. So that's going to be my weight of the soil wedge. So once the weight of the soil wedge is known, then I can go on to look at your free body diagram, what I have represented for that soil wedge to apply your corresponding equilibrium conditions. Okay. So for now, I'll be stopping my discussion with this, and in our next class, we'll continue our discussion from here. Yeah.